So hello and welcome to our lesson Port and Berth Charter, tendering the notice of readiness. What are the differences and when is the ship an arrived ship? That is actually what we have to discuss. So a berth charter. A berth is an individual loading point on a jetty, wharf, or in a dock system. In a berth charter, the berth is named in the charter party. The ship will be an arrived ship as she is alongside the name berth. There's a very essential that we know that there are two different parts, berth and port charter. A berth charter is a specified place within the port. It's a place where the vessel actually loads and discharges. Under the terms of a berth charter party, the loading voyage does not end until the vessel is actually in the berth where it will load the cargo or discharge. The charter party will usually name the berth or provide that the berth will be nominated as the place for loading or discharging. This will make the charter a berth charter. The berth is an agreed destination, and therefore the vessel will be an arrived ship when she is secured and moored safely at the berth. It is straightforward. Notice of readiness can be only tendered if we are alongside the ship. So in the berth charter, the risk of delay is placed with the ship owner. That means the delay within the port, like port congestion, bad weather, their tugs are not available, and so on. The berth charter at the Laytime will not commence until they reach the designated berth. So which means, for example, it reads in the charter party, on safe berth Rotterdam, or on Terminal 2 at London. The opposite is in a port charter where we said Rotterdam at a safe berth. Here the berth is not specified, but the port. In a port charter, the notice of readiness to be tendered if the ship arrives within the port limit and is at the immediate effective disposal of the charterer. Within the port charter party, if the vessel is free, and the berth is free, if the berth is free, the vessel will only be an arrived ship when she is all fast at the berth. However, if she is unable to proceed directly to the berth because of congestion, tides, bad weather, the lack of availability, unavailability of tugs, she will still have arrived at her agreed destination under a port charter party if she has satisfied the Lord Right test, meaning she has reached a position within the port, and at the position she is at the immediate effective disposition of the charterer. That means as soon as you reach the port limit, then you can tender the notice of readiness. So as an example, Singapore on safe berth, the charter still have an implied right to nominate the berth, unless the charter party especially stated something to the contrary. But here, the vessel may tender the notice of readiness when she arrived within the named geographical area, that means within the port limit. So the sea passage in a port charter party ends when the ship arrived at the official perimeter of the port, regardless of whether it has direct berthing or not. Thus, the notice of readiness can be given on arrival, and the Laytime starts counting according to the stipulated rules. The berth charter, the sea passage ends when the ship arrives at the berth, only that is after berth, and it is only at that moment that the notice of readiness can be tendered. Let's have a small example how this works. So here we have a berth charter, meaning the ship arrives here at the pilot station and have to go here to Terminal 1. It's a berth charter, so which means as soon as we are passing the geographical limits, which can be found in the nautical publications, the ship is not an arrived ship. The ship is an arrived ship as soon as she is here alongside the berth, then the notice of readiness can be tendered. So what will happen if we are in a port charter? So which means if the ship is in a port charter, now the ship is passing the geographical limit. And actually it can now also tender the notice of readiness because we are past the port limit. But if the berth is available, then the notice of readiness can be only given or will be given as soon as the ship is alongside the berth. But What will happen if, for example, the berth is not available? So again, the same procedure. We are arriving near pilot station. Now the pilot said we have to drop the anchor at anchorage B and have to wait that the berth will be available. So which means the ship arrives here. So now the ship is also an arrived ship. She is in the position in the port limits where the notice of readiness can be tendered if the ship cannot berth because the berth is occupied and have to wait at the place where normally ships have to wait. And this is here the anchorage. Therefore, the notice of readiness can be tendered here. And that means the laytime will start. So now we have seen the differences in the berth charter direct if the ship is berthed, and if in the port charter, then the ship have to be in the immediate disposition of the charterer, and the notice of readiness can be tendered as soon as we are passing the port limit, or if the ship also is at the berth. So here, another case, the ship must wait at anchorage because the berth is occupied, but anchorage is not in the port limit. So which means here, if it is a berth charter, clear, no way out, then we only tendering the notice of readiness if the ship is berthed here. But if it's a port charter, then the anchorage here is not part of the port limits, and therefore also here, the notice of readiness can be not tendered because the anchorage is not in the port limits. Therefore, the ship is here not an arrived ship. Check, very important is, and check the charter party for any special requirements with regards to tendering the notice of readiness, like in the GENCOM 7.6, late time for loading discharging shall commence at 1 p.m. if the notice of readiness is given before noon, and at 6 a.m. next working day if the notice of readiness is given during office hours after noontime. So here we have clear mark before noontime, after noontime, and when the late time will start to commence. Further, be very, very careful if you if there are any exemptions in, that means exemption clauses and exemption clauses for the late time. Because the clauses related to contractually stipulated reason for which, if they occur, late time does not run. For example, ship cannot berth due to strike or tugs available, or pilots are not available. So which means this is very important because the notice of readiness, as soon as she tendered, the late time will start. That means if the late time will be exceeded, that means if you have a delay in discharging or loading, which is above the agreed late time, then there is a demurrage money which have to be paid to the ship owner. And this is very important because if the late time cannot be kept, then there is a breach of the contract. And here the common sentence or the common approach is once on demurrage, always on demurrage. So which means here we have to check if there are special clauses in or not, and also have to check, for example, if damages which will be out of the delayed late time or caused by the delayed late time are part of the demurrage money or not. So that must be clearly marked in the charter party that this is included or excluded. So now we see why the berth and the port charter party, or to know why we have berth and port charter party, is so important, because the notice of readiness will actually mark for us the beginning of the late time. That means the beginning of the late time is also a part later for demurrage and dispatch money. Okay, thanks for watching this video and have a nice day.